Hello, everyone. Welcome to Silicon Global Online, June 16. We're getting to the longest day of the year. Yay! Spring is here and it feels like summer here. Anyhow, hope everyone is staying cool. Thanks for joining us. I really appreciate it. For those who have been on our shows before, you know this drill. Silicon Dragon Ventures, what we're all about. We have our newsletter videos, this series, Ask a VC Anything. We have Zoom, Twitter, WeChat, our mobile app. You can find us in a lot of places. And then there's my books, of course, three of them so far, 2008, 2011, 2019, more to come. Stay tuned. Okay, Circle membership. I know a lot of you are already Circle members. Hey, I appreciate it. Oh, and by the way, have you heard this new phrase, making a circle into a square? I don't know how you do that, but I've heard it 3 times in the last 3 days on technology shows. So maybe Nicolas and Paul can tell us about this circle and square business. So let's say hello to Paul, Holland, and Nicolas Sauvage. So I'm going to stop share here for a minute after I introduce them, and we'll be starting in a minute. And so I wanted to let everybody know that if you have questions, just type them into the chat box or the Q&A box, because we want to get a lot of questions going. We have these 2 Silicon boys here today, and we want to keep them going and keep them occupied. So, okay. Well, let me introduce Paul first. Paul is a general partner in residence at TDK Ventures. We're going to be hearing a lot more about TDK Ventures in a moment. He's also managing director at Mach 49, where he's keeping very busy. He lives here in Silicon Valley. He grew up in Southern Virginia. That's a good combo, I think. So here's a little bit about his career. You can see right here. He has recently joined Mach 49 and it's recently become this partner in residence at TDK. So we're going to hear a lot more about that. His career, quite a few IPOs in here, quite a lot of market cap accumulated, even a human Google at SRI International. So maybe we get to hear a little bit more about that. He's graduated from James Madison University and UVA, and MBA from UC Berkeley. So quite a few credentials here. And he's been on the film side, producing some films. So maybe we can ask him about that too for all you film lovers out there. Okay. Now, Nicolas is president of TDK Ventures, which is a fairly new operation, VC arm of TDK. So assets under management, 200 million. They're running 2 venture funds. And Nicolas works and resides in San Jose. He grew up in France, a village of France, and maybe we'll hear more about that. And then he worked for several years in Taiwan, actually 12 years in Taiwan. He has been involved in also several acquisitions. He's worked in smartphones, sensors, software. He's a very techie person. He started out his career at Siemens in Germany. Okay. Education here, London Business School, INSEAD, Stanford Graduate School of Business. And his interest. Well, I got him to, cough up that he likes reading and he loves Taiwan. So maybe he can tell us why he loves Taiwan. But anyhow, let us get started. And TDK Ventures, to warm up all your questions, here's a little bit of a cheat sheet about what they do. They're an early stage investor in innovative tech startups, started in July 2018. 2 funds. The second fund was just raised April 2021. They have just made a 3rd investment from the new fund. They have 15 portfolio companies from Fund 1, 1 unicorn already, 2 M&As from that first fund. So I know a lot of you are on this call, on this Zoom, like to know about the results. And here you go. Here's some results and that you can ask them about. Okay, so when I asked Nicolas, like, what are they, and Nicolas and Paul, well, what is TDK all about? These responses came back. What they're looking for is king of the hill companies in king of the hill market sectors, provide TDK insights and directions. Their top geographies, you can see here, US, Israel, China, Germany. And then we'll get into this a little bit more too, because some of this code of conduct and TDK goodness, I know we want to ask them. So here's some questions that I came up with, but I want all of you to come up with your own questions and then just write them into the chat box and we'll get to them in a minute. Okay, now I'm going to shut up and then let Paul and Nicolas come on stage here. So thank you very much, Paul and Nicolas. I hope that wasn't too long of an introduction of you, but there was a lot to get in there.
Not at all. Thank you. It was very comprehensive and you got everything right, which was good.
Good. All right.
Thank you.
Well, that's my journalistic, training that kicks in every now and then.
That's great.
Okay. All right. Good. So look, for those who don't know about TDK, why don't we just start there? What is TDK?
So I think most of the audience, if they're more than 35 years old, will remember the cassette from TDK. I have to say we have moved on. It's an interesting company. So 85 years old, Japanese company, initially B2B, then B2C with a cassette, and then back to B2B. So it's a company that has reinvented itself a number of times, made a number of pivots in a way not too dissimilar from what we are looking for with startups and entrepreneurs. Today we are in a lot of products. We do sensors and actuators and batteries, energy solution. And really it's all about digital transformation and energy transformation. And what my CEO would keep telling you is we want to contribute to society. And so the joke he made, which I thought was really nice, was 3 years into the job of CEO of TDK, he came back saying, that's it, I found our mission. Our mission is to contribute to society. And then he said, and then I look back at the bylaws of the company and it says exactly that. So I just realized I wasted 3 years.
Okay. So Paul, how about you? How long did it take you to realize this? Or did you know it already?
Well, it's once getting exposed and learning more and getting more connected in with the people, then it's just I have an unusual background, but not that unusual in the Silicon Valley. I've never worked for a large company, and so the largest company I ever worked for got to 1,000 people. And so I've mentioned this several times with Nicola, but I got my first badge ever at TDK, and I carry it in my backpack. I'm very proud that it's my first badge. But getting exposed to TDK, and I've really learned to love the company. I think it's a very innovative group. Ishiguro-san, the CEO, and Taro-san, and corporate development, and all the other executives that we've met are very forward thinking, and they really want to move the needle in terms of growth and change.
Oh, good. So what about the Olympics? Is TDK involved in that at all, or are you going to go over, Nicolas or Paul, to participate in all that?
I'm not planning to go. I think it's going to be touch and go for many people. So I'm hoping it's going to be a great success. I just hope so.
Okay.
Yeah, I don't think that neither Nicola nor I would actually be allowed to go, if I understand it correctly right now. So.
I see.
Yeah.
Okay.
TDK is associated with a lot of sponsorship for sports, and it's always about reaching to the next level. So I think what I like about TDK is that it's always looking for how to increase our game and to contribute to society more. So if not this Olympic, it will be the next one.
Okay. All right. Yeah. Well, I know some athletes were pretty disappointed with the cancellation last summer, but now they're ready to go, I think. But although I think they're going to be spending more time in the housing than they might have expected. Okay. Well, anyhow, how does corporate innovation work at TDK, and what is the role of TDK Ventures? What are you trying to do for them?
So I think TDK Ventures is a corporate venture arm of TDK, and it's one extra pillar to corporate innovation. TDK has, of course, a really good R&D team with really good budget and world-class experts. It's got a corporate planning team that looks at M&A and innovations in many places. The anecdote, I guess, is that even before we started TDK Ventures, just in the previous 10 years, TDK had made 10 minority equity investments in startups. So it was no stranger to actually work, engage, invest in innovative startups. TDK Ventures was created to create an extra pillar to this corporate innovation where rather than being reactive to what comes to us in terms of startups, we try to be much more proactive. We try to look at what is a TDK long-term strategy. We look at spaces we're not in today or the market is too small, and with technology we may not have. And the idea is to try to make bets on the future, what we think is going to be big tomorrow. And that exploration mission is really about helping guide TDK's long-term strategy, where to go, but importantly, where not to go.
Okay. And then, Paul, what is the role of Mach 49 in all this? Because I know you have a very strong tech career and venture career. So what is the role? What is your role in all this?
Yeah, so Nicolas and I met at Stanford University. He was taking the Stanford Executive Program, which is an outstanding program that's only, the people who get to go are very promising kind of mid-career people that are being groomed for upper echelon jobs in large companies. And so Nicolas was there, and we gave a talk. I gave a talk with Linda Yates, the founder and CEO of Mach 49, and it was about this concept of disrupting from the inside out by launching and building new companies, and also the concept of disrupting outside in, like building a world-class CVC. And the differentiation that we offered and continue to offer is that rather than come at it from the point of view of a CVC, where I've never worked, we come at it from the point of view of a top-tier Silicon Valley venture fund. So we created this concept that actually Nicolas deserves credit because he named the concept of GP in residence, so general partner in residence. So I've collected a squad of people of roughly my vintage, and that group of people represent over $1 trillion in exits across their venture capital career in some of the most iconic names of the last 25 or 30 years in venture. And Nicolas really helped us shape the program that we now offer to 16 other corporates around the world, where we come in and we help advise new venture funds inside these corporations, and we help try to found them sort of the right way and get them off to a great start and help them grow over time. But the idea was Nicolas. He literally came up after the class and said, I want to start TDK Corporate Ventures, and off we went.
Okay. So that was about 2 years ago, or actually it was more than 2 years ago.
It was 3 years ago. It was summer 2018 when the idea started, and I had this discussion with Paul. And it was really interesting because when I talked to Paul, I just had 2 different classes just before that, the weeks before. One was about why you want to do a corporate VC, to learn about this exploration mission and learn about new space, new use case, new application, new technologies. And then I had another class which was why corporate VCs never work. And that was, of course, provocative, but it was all about the mistakes that CVCs do that VCs don't like to see, or entrepreneurs really hate. And when I met with Paul, Paul said, yes, both are correct, but there's a good way to do it. And if you follow the best practices, you have a chance to actually be a really good corporate VCs. But, and this is a problem, is many corporate VCs in the past did not act so well. And so you don't really have the benefit of the doubt to start. And if you make one mistake, maybe a second mistake, that's it. You're not going to get the benefit of the doubt, and people will stop bringing you interesting projects. So for me, the reason why working with Paul was so good is that I got to apply the best practices as perceived from someone who's done it for 2 decades as a general partner. And
Right.
that's a kind of coaching, and I call it golf teacher, which is all about best practices versus learning by yourself and making mistakes, that really helps us to really focus on the exploration part.
Right, right. So then what are some of the mistakes that corporate venture capitalists do then? I mean, because, you know, for a while they didn't have the best reputation. And I mean, what are some of the classic mistakes?
Yeah, so I want to just double click on the golf analogy because I tell this story all the time. So Nicolas, when he went to get approval to do the TDK Ventures and to work with us on it and things like that, he had such an eloquent expression for, you know, this all Japanese executive team, many of whom are obviously intentionally interested in golf. And he said, look, I could go out tomorrow and I could take up golf and I could go just start hitting the ball and I'll hit it all over the place and I'll score terribly and things like that. And after a couple of years of doing it, I'll eventually get decent. You know, I'll get to be good, maybe. Or I can go hire a really good golf teacher and they can teach me how to do it correctly from the beginning so that I'm more efficient out of the gate. And then I'm much better in a couple of years when I get this opportunity. And once again, Nicolas got a gift for kind of marketing communications. And we've adapted that to conversations with our other clients from that perspective. But simply put, venture capital is really about 2 things, super simple: deal flow and decision making. And generally speaking, corporate venture groups have poor, if not terrible, deal flow, and their decision making is weak or inconsistent and ineffective. And so with that as a starting point, and we had this wonderful blank sheet of paper opportunity thanks to Nicolas, because he was successful with his superior communication skills, he convinced Ishiguro-san and the team to designate $50 million initially into the first fund. So we had a blank sheet of paper and we said, okay, how are we going to do this right? Like, let's follow all the best practices around, you know, pre-screening projects, screening projects, diligence, you know, how we're going to do outreach, how we're going to meet people. So, you know, we began a process with Nicolas that ultimately has resulted in him meeting God knows how many people now, 60, 70, 80 people. The first 20 out of 25 were our people. And, you know, we kind of really primed the pump and gotten him out there. Now, one of the many things that Nicolas is so gifted about is that he's one of the most effective networkers, not just a, you know, kind of a consummate networker, but he's one of the most effective networkers. He meets people and then he finds productive things to do with them that are a win-win. So he's created, I would argue, among the many accomplishments, but he's created the most effective and most powerful, potent network of anybody in CVC in the first 2 years, kind of ever. And it's formidable now. When you look at, if you could have access to his LinkedIn page, he's gotten to know almost everybody at this point, which is extraordinary. And that's something that most folks in CVC, they just never get a chance to do, right? They get stuck in basically sort of 3rd-tier conversations, and then those 3rd-tier conversations result in 3rd-tier deal flow, which results in 3rd-tier performance. And we tried to get it right from the start, and then we got a little bit lucky. We got into some really good things early, and then Nicolas put together a team that you should definitely ask him about how he did this, but he put together a team that's just doing outstanding performance and really superior performance.
Okay.
I think Paul is really too nice, but I'll just add one more thing about this golf teacher analogy, because it really matters when you decide how to start corporate VC. If you were to learn yourself golf, at some point you're going to plateau. You're never going to become world class. And here what I'm looking for working with Paul and his team at Mike 49 is I have confidence we won't get this plateau. We will keep improving every year. And for me, a success metric is if I look back 12 months ago, I will be like, oh, wow, okay, we really improved. And I'm hoping that it's a continuous improvement and we won't get to a point where we get this plateau that otherwise we could get if we were trying to do everything ourselves or to learn by making mistakes too quickly.
Okay. So you've already made some new investments from your new fund. Can you tell us about those?
So we've made 2 that we have announced, and the third one we just closed on Monday. The first one we did for Fund
Don't
2.
want to announce it on this show?
You should have asked before. I could have checked with a portfolio company. I'm afraid.
All right,
All right. We could plan for next show, and then I'll make sure I time it for you.
Next show. On the replay.
You see how we plan it. So the first one is Analog Inference, which is an amazing chipset company leveraging analog compute to match really order of magnitude better TOPS per watt profile, which really matters when you look at IoT and edge devices. So that I think we're really, really proud of having invested in.
Is that in Silicon Valley?
It is in the Silicon Valley, in Mountain View. Yes.
Okay.
One I can't talk about, but let me say that I will share more soon. But what you see in the back are the 15 companies that we have invested in. Actually, 16 showing here. So the one in yellow is, I think, what Paul was mentioning, which was the exits that we've made before. So we've done 2 M&A, which is SLD Laser and Origin in 3D printing. Gencell went IPO, so really exciting moment for us. And then Grok is a unicorn you mentioned earlier in the show.
Sure. So everybody learn from this background that he has. Everybody take a lesson from that.
I think it's what Paul says. I really like to tell the stories of our portfolio companies. And so anytime I have a chance to talk about TDK Ventures, I don't talk about TDK Ventures. I talk about our entrepreneurs that we are backing.
I see. Okay. Well, I like that very much. Actually, I don't have my usual background on today, but, if I had all those IPOs and M&As like you did, maybe I'd put those up. That's a great technique. Okay. So tell me of the portfolio geographically. Silicon Valley represents what percentage?
I think it's probably a third or a quarter of our investments. Okay. We do invest across the US, across many states in the US, including the East Coast. So I didn't mention, but the second investment from our Fund 3 is Battery Resources, which is doing battery recycling, which is really meaningful for society and for sustainability. But we have invested in Israel. I mentioned the IPO with Gencell, China in Shanghai. And it's back to what you had shown in the introduction slide. We're looking for the global king of the hill, the startups that is most likely going to get the alpha customer, pivot next, win the beta customers. And the mindset behind it is if we're really good at finding the king of the hills, we are going to get good financial returns. But on top of that, we're going to learn earliest about the space we want to learn about, which means that our strategic learnings will be very high as well. And maybe the way to simplify it is if we do a really good job as a corporate VC, it means that we are picking the winners well. And picking the winners well is the same thing as a financial VC, except that it correlates really well with strategic learnings.
Okay. So what are the most exciting areas that you're investing in?
Okay, I have to confess, I think they're all super exciting. I mean, if we think about recycling of batteries, it's so meaningful. And we're looking at end-to-end. Same for Gencell, we're doing hydrogen fuel cells, really meaningful. And they have this green ammonia project, which is really the holy grail of sustainability for energy to hospitals and other places. If we think about 3D printing, if you can start to do really quality 3D printing where you need it, you don't need to transport everything. You can actually really improve. So I think maybe one way to answer it is anything that contributes to society and that improves sustainability of the planet. It is so exciting, and it's always related to some breakthrough in material science where TDK can add a lot of value to our entrepreneurs.
Okay. Does TDK actually weigh in on the decisions for your portfolio companies?
So it's what I would call a loose connection. So clearly we want to invest in what is long-term strategy of TDK. So we know where TDK wants to go, and we want to provide extra information, extra guidance where to go and not to go. But at the same time, we really have a freedom to invest even in places where TDK is not involved today. So to give an example of that, we invested in 2 companies that are in medical space where TDK has not been involved. But somehow in our team, we believe this is a place that TDK should learn more about, because a lot of the products could be relevant in the medical space and the health tech space. And I think that these 2 investments are proving to be really useful for us to start shaping a view about where TDK can contribute to society even more, improve lives, and maybe at some point saving lives.
So Paul, what does your squad do? I love that term. What does your squad do in TDK Ventures?
So, there's a life cycle that occurs if you're fortunate enough to end up in a top tier venture firm, which is some people, kind of die with their boots on. I was fortunate when I made the film Something Venture, which is really about the origins of the Silicon Valley and origins of the venture industry. I profiled 9 people. 7 of the 9 were in their 80s or 90s when I did the feature. But it really chronicled how Apple got funded, Intel got funded, things like that. But for most of us, we have a kind of a period of peak activity. In my case, it ran over about 18 years when I was a general partner. For a number of the folks that are kind of in my squad, as it were, and I have lots of names for them: Gang of Rogues, 7 Samurai. There's a lot of different pieces. They're all at a place in life where, and I'll pick on or highlight more our friend Pete Moran. So Pete it was the co-founder of Dahl Capital Management. Prior to that, he founded McKinsey's tech practice in Palo Alto. Semiconductor physics, deep educational background, taught at MIT. Just super smart guy, really nice guy. And when I got introduced to him, I didn't know him in my operating career or my venture career because we worked in different areas. He was at a place in life kind of similar to mine, which is that he's teaching more than he's doing around the core aspects of venture capital. And many of us and Pete has had more organized, guest lecture gigs or, actually teaching semesters full classes and things. I've guest lectured at schools all over the world. And so you get to a place where you build up thousands of hours of experience. And there's a point in time that the young people in your venture firm have heard all those stories, and they can only absorb so much from that perspective. And so, and then when you're ready to move on and start doing angel investing, as Pete's doing an amazing job, he's doing and building a really incredible portfolio in healthcare related investing, which was not his practice when he was at DCM. Then you get to a place where you want to share some of that knowledge and some of those experiences and insight. And so what's happened with Mach 49, when we do this disrupting outside in practice, this CVC advisory practice, we give an outlet to those. In fact, across our GPs and residents, we've got 180 years of general partner experience at some of the top firms in the Valley. And we give an outlet to those thousands and thousands of hours of experience and chance to distill it down into nuggets of information that can be useful for a Nicolas Sauvage and for our clients at Goodyear Ventures or Conviviality Ventures or Hypertherm Ventures or et cetera. So it's a new model. It was sort of right here in front of us, and Nicolas has helped me invent it, basically, for lack of a better way to describe it. We had already been doing it a little bit, but we've really iterated and I think improved upon the model, and now we're apparently popular in part because Nicolas does a great job of telling these stories, and as do our other clients. And now we're in 16 of the Fortune 500, helping people just do a better job of venture investing.
Okay, so Goodyear and who else?
So companies like Goodyear, Hypertherm, which is a really cool triple bottom line manufacturing company located up in New Hampshire, largest high-tech manufacturer in New Hampshire. Pernod Ricard, which is Absolute Vodka, Jameson whiskey, Mum Champagne, second largest spirits provider in the world. We created Conviviality Ventures, the first venture fund in history formed to fund fun, F-U-N. And so we do that with them. It's and Nicolas knows Stéphane Longuet, the MD there, and they collaborate on various different things. we're working with a whole range of new people that are expanding in the space. People like Baker Hughes moving out of the oil economy and into the electrification economy, or moving into the new energy economy.
Sure.
Working with you know, companies like Vale, which is one of the largest mining companies in the world, as they move down more of an ESG and kind of climate tech path, and many others now. It's you know, we've got lots. I can't remember all of them. So.
Well, that's really interesting. I mean, yeah, I picked up on Goodyear because I'm from Ohio, and actually, I interviewed somebody from Goodyear recently, and I heard about their airless tires, which sounded really interesting. And I know that they do have this Goodyear. They're the only remaining tire company in Akron, Ohio. All the other ones left. So Goodyear's the only one, the good soldier. They stay. Their headquarters is there. Their R&D is there. So it must be interesting to work with them, because the automotive area is just, you know, booming with innovation.
Yeah, I'd say mobility is probably a third of our business in some form or another, including work we do with TDK. And Goodyear's off to a very, very good start. We were helpful in getting them into a really cool autonomous driving company, Too Simple, that as luck would have it, just as after we closed the investment, decided to launch an IPO, and the company's now worth, the last time I checked, the company's worth $12 billion. So we're 9 months into that company. So that one's off to a pretty good start. So I think, you know, I mean, I'm seeing in some of the Q&A, you know, Harold Kalman is mentioning the, hey, you know, corporate venture, it's kind of broken. The model hasn't worked. And I wouldn't say that the model hasn't worked. I would say that the success stories were the exceptions, not the rule. You know, the Qualcomms of the world, who I think, you know, did a very, very good job. Intel in its prime, BMW has done a very good job, and things like that. Now we humbly think that it's time for a new model. I mean, we want people to do what Nicolas has dedicated himself to do, is just to say, I'm not trying to be the best corporate venture capitalist out there. I'm trying to be the best venture capitalist out there. And so we are just pour all of our energy and effort and time into trying to, you know, make him and his team as strong as they can be. And, you know, you find, just like in so many things in life and in business, you know, people get stuck in orthodoxies. And one of the orthodoxies is, oh, well, you have to go and you have to matriculate a certain way to make it into a top tier venture fund. And then that's the only way you're going to be one of the top venture capitalists out there. And we're well on the way to proving that that's actually completely untrue, and that really smart, ambitious, hardworking people can learn the practice of venture capital and then apply it in their own kind of opportunity, as it were. And I think TDK leads the class in that.
I think maybe one important element. I saw the comment from Harold that corporate venture does not work, and that's also one thing I was actually worried during the recruitment was, do I recruit people who have a corporate VC experience and they may actually have some of the bad practice I don't want us to have? Or do I go for people who have no VC or CVC experience? And working with Mike 49 and Paul gave me the license to recruit people who have no CVC or VC experience to be my investment directors. Right. And that was good because it meant that I could choose people who are very, very passionate about technology and the space we want to invest in. And I know that with Paul and his team, we are going to raise the skill set for us to be a top venture capital practice. Right. And you were asking earlier, and I never answered, so maybe I should answer that. You were asking, what kind of bad practices do corporate VCs do? And I'll give you one that is really not obvious, because it feels like a good idea, but it's such a bad idea. And many corporate VCs in the past, and I think still today some of them do it, is they would gate an investment to a contract with a mothership. And it sounds good. It sounds like the entrepreneur will get extra revenue from this contract. They will get a customer. It means that you get more value from the company you invest in. The problem is you miss a key stakeholder, which is the other investors. And suddenly what you're doing is you're forcing the startup you invest in to go in a direction that may actually not be the right direction for the company. And so the investors may actually lose out from this. And so it's not intuitive. It sounds like a win-win. But actually, if you look at the full ecosystem, it's actually a win-win-lose and potentially a lose-win-lose. That's never a good thing. And so that's a kind of bad practice that we are making sure we don't do. So even in our introduction deck, I think our third slide is already saying, We never link contractual engagements to an investment.
Okay. So when we were preparing for this session, we talked a little bit about the code of conduct at TDK Ventures and also the TDK goodness. So I think maybe our audience would appreciate hearing about those two aspects of what you're doing.
Okay, let me start with a code of conduct. I don't believe in values being top-down. I think they should be bottom-up. So it took us 2 years to capture and document what are the key values of TDK Ventures. And we call them code of conduct because of CODE. A C for contributing to society, which really is what TDK is all about, but we really embrace it. O is for one team reaching for the sky. So we really want one TDK, one team, and we work as a team, but diverse and curious, but reaching for the sky, which means that every year we want to raise a bar. And if we can raise a bar for the full corporate venturing ecosystem, great. That would delight us because that's good for the entrepreneurs. D is delivering deep insights. That's our product. That's what we deliver to TDK. We really want to learn a lot, non-obvious insights that we can use for investing, but also guiding TDK. And the E is so important for us. This is entrepreneurs first. And that leads to the point about TDK goodness, which is every time we want to help our entrepreneurs, we call it TDK goodness as soon as they confirm they valued it. So it's not from our perspective, but from their perspective. And it could be introductions to investors, introduction to TDK teams. It could be getting them on the press. It could be having some marketing support. It could be any type of a help as long as it's valued by our entrepreneurs and our portfolio companies and non-portfolio startups. So if we find startups that we believe are good and contribute to society, we're going to go out of our way to help them, even if we don't have an investment with them. And that's what we coined TDK goodness. And we track them. So we are reaching about 300 TDK goodness since we've started.
You're tracking it.
We are tracking because if you don't track it, you don't know what you're doing and you don't know if you're really improving. And here, what we're trying to make sure is that this is something we feel proud about, we feel good about. And if you track what you bring value to the entrepreneurs, that gives you a measure. And maybe some of it is vanity, but some of it is feeling good about what we do and wanting to do a virtuous circle. So yes, we do track it.
Okay, so what do you ask them?
So we don't ask them. We actually, we listen to them, and if they say they wish some help for the next round to get introductions for entrepreneurs, we are going to do that. If they want to have some support, introductions in TDK, we will do that. But I think you're thinking about the Net Promoter Score, the NPS survey?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. So what were some of the questions you or there, if they're not questions, it's just feedback, or just how do you get this? How do you find out what they think about you?
So what we want to do is once a year, not too often, so that it's not too cumbersome for the entrepreneurs. We are going to ask them a very simple question, which is, how likely would you recommend us to another entrepreneur? Which we believe is a high bar, because an entrepreneur who's not happy about you is never going to recommend you to a fellow entrepreneur. But if you delight them, they're going to go out of their way to recommend you and give testimonials and really be your reference. And so we ask this question once a year. It's an NPS question, so it's 1 to 10. How likely would you recommend us to another entrepreneur? And then we ask, what could we do better? What have we done that delighted you? And we are very happy that our first NPS survey came back with 86% NPS score, which is really, really good. So it looks like we are doing the right things. And now what we need is to really look at what they said we should improve and make sure we improve, and we have an action plan for next year.
Okay. What's NPS?
NPS stands for Net Promoter Score. So this is a question you get from time to time, which is, how likely would you recommend this product to a friend and family? And so every time someone answers a 9 or 10 out of 10, it's what is called a promoter. So it's a +1. If it's 7 or 8, it means they are passive. So they're not going to go out of their way to say something positive or negative about you. But 6 out of 10 or below is what we call a detractor. That's a -1. And then you add all these +1, 0, and -1, divide by the number of people, and that gives you an NPS score. So it's basically go from -100% to +100%. And basically, if you want to be above 40% to really have a feel that you are adding value.
All right. Do venture capital shops do that kind of thing, Paul?
Yes, they do. Yeah, in fact, we had a system in place at Foundation where every meeting was rated, and we offered people the chance to offer unsolicited comments, like, I think the guy I met with dozed off, or whatever it might happen to be, or I think that they were really helpful, and et cetera. And we reviewed those in our partner meetings, and the highlights were kind of sent around. It's not every firm is going to do that kind of thing, but we went through this very introspective phase at Foundation, and this was led by our head of marketing at the time, Meg Sloan, and she was a huge believer in NPS, and we used a very simple system to kind of measure that. So
I see. Okay. So Hal Kelman chimed in. He said anything above 85 or 80 something is phenomenal. So you guys have hit it off the charts. Okay, so some people online wanted us to talk about some of your deals, like your 3D printing company, your biotech companies. I spent some time in Youngstown recently, and Youngstown is a real 3D nest. We have the Youngstown Business Incubator, just totally focused on 3D, and then biotech. Look, I spent some time in my home state during COVID and everything, so I know all about Youngstown and Cleveland and Akron now. But Cleveland has the whole biotech innovation and the health tech corridor going on. But anyhow, tell us about your biotech companies, your 3D printing. Why don't we start with the 3D printing company? What are some of your 3D printing companies that you're involved with, that have invested in?
So the first 3D printing company we invested in was Origin, which was then later acquired by the #1 3D printing company in the world, Stratasys. What we really liked about Origin was they came from a material science point of view. They looked at what materials would really be important, like maybe fireproof, and we create a platform that can actually deliver this. So most 3D printing companies have a vertical integration where they provide the materials, they build themselves, the machine and everything else. Origin partnered with a top like BASF, and they got the top materials coming from them. And then they built a machine to really do really well for this. And so their approach was really good, because if you think about 3D printing company, many companies can create 3D printing machine. But what you need to think about is the end result. And the end result is you want a product you can 3D print that will be high quality and fit the job to be done. And ideally, you want this to be even better than what you can do mass production. And so that all starts with a fundamental material science breakthrough. You need to really understand materials. And so if we ever were to announce another investment, that would probably be about 3D printing, where a fundamental material science breakthrough really happened. And one place with Origin was more on the polymer side, but clearly metal has a lot of attractiveness. Now, on the medical side, we've made 2 investments. So one was Genetesis, which is the one on the top. And this one is a beautiful marriage of what TDK is known for, which is magnets. And the cassette was an application of really high quality magnet understanding, as well as the application for detecting if you have a heart attack that could reproduce. And so what they do is they really identify your heart after you had a heart incident, and whether you should stay for observation or you can go home. And today the alternative is going through a stress test, staying overnight, which is not only expensive, but not really pleasant. And here you would be able to identify with the magnetic field of your heart, whether you're actually okay to go home or not. As a second health tech company we invested is really using amazing technology like PMUT called Echo. And what they do is they deliver a very good inside imaging, really high quality of your body. So think about the ear doctor that sees you coming, and they can actually check inside your body for what you have as a problem or not, versus having to wait for the next machine to be open. And that's basically what I believe will be the next stethoscope, which is every doctor would have them in the pocket and they can use it right away. And that's a beautiful technology where, again, TDK has a lot of technology we could contribute to this company.
I see. So that leads to this question that's here in the Q&A from one of our online audience members who mentions that 20 years ago, most high-tech companies had a corporate VC and everyone was set up with the idea that they were going to be investing with a strategic fit. And then the most successful ones were actually those that were independent of the business unit, like Qualcomm and Intel. So when did TDK make that transition? Or did TDK make that transition?
So I want to give a lot of credit to TDK's management, and I learned it afterwards, but nearly every year, someone inside TDK would propose to do a corporate VC. And they never accepted because most times the reasons was the wrong reasons. And for example, it was because other Japanese companies are doing it, we should be doing it. When I came to propose a project, I had a very simple view. It's about an exploration mission. And I had this analogy where TDK is on this big mountain together with the other competitors. And the job of TDK is to go on the top of this mountain, whether it's revenue, profit, customer delight, that's their job. And that's about exploitation of the mountain. And the corporate VC instead is this little helicopter that flies in a cloudy day to different peaks. And it's cloudy, so you don't know how tall is the mountain, but you just land, learn about the ecosystem, learn about technology, learn about everything you can tell, fly back with that information so you can tell TDK, okay, this is a really good mountain to go next or not.
Yeah.
And so the idea was this exploration mission in market we're not in today, with technology we may not have. And that's what Ishiguro-san, our CEO, and our top management said. That's exactly what we want from a corporate VC. Right. And so I think you need to know the why you want to do a corporate VC and then stick to it in everything you do. And that's why we did it in TDK. Okay.
Yeah, so Paul mentions here that basically TDK started out that way. So there's really no transition needed, that you've had the mandate to make these independent decisions from the start. So yeah, thank you. Let's see, I think we had some chat in here as well. Who has another question? Okay. What about this thing about the square and the circle? Have you guys heard this new phrase that's going around?
I don't know about this, but I have, it reminds me of something which maybe is funny for today. Do you know what starts as a square, becomes a circle, becomes a triangle?
No, a piece of pie. I don't know. A slice of pie.
A pizza.
A pizza. Oh, I see. Actually, I was close. All right. Okay, I was just guessing.
I think you could answer the question from before. I think it was a really good question for you.
Yeah, he answered that. But Hal Kelman had a couple. He wanted to know if you guys knew about the 3 C's. Columbus, Cleveland, and Cincinnati. And if you're doing any venture capital investing in any of those 3 C markets that are often overlooked and underestimated.
So you have to add Akron to that, and we are the co-founders of Goodyear Ventures in Akron, Ohio. So we're probably the only people you're ever going to meet that are co-founders of a venture firm in Ohio. So
okay.
And we've collaborated with companies. Our other clients have collaborated with people like Drive Capital. Mark Plummy used to be at Sequoia, now in Columbus, and there it's a burgeoning scene there. But yeah, for years and years
I've interviewed
flyover states and so forth, they were just severely underrepresented, and they still could use more venture. But this is one of the things I explored in something venture. What does it take to kind of get the flywheel to turn? And you need a number of ingredients. Like, why is the Silicon Valley here? Well, it's here because people came to the West because people in the West took more risks than people in the East. So the culture is different here and has been really since, kind of the expansion of the American West. There are 2 of the top, arguably 5 or 10 universities in the world are within, 50 kilometers of each other here in Stanford and Berkeley, and the confluence of those. And then there was, sort of this notion of a culture that built here, that was this sort of co-opetition culture and also a trust-based culture where people could get real estate, you know, and maybe not pay for it for the first year, right? Then, or they get paid in stock. So there are a bunch of practices that evolved here in the Silicon Valley that that just take a much longer to take root in other places because you're fighting against the orthodoxies. You know, Nicolas is from a lovely town of Lille in France, and Lille is not the Silicon Valley. And he can articulate for you all the reasons why. I come from Prince George, Virginia, and I think it's a beautiful place, but it's never going to be the nexus of venture capital because it just doesn't have the ingredients to be able to do that.
Right.
What we're seeing now, and we're seeing it a lot through Mach 49, where probably 2/3 of our clients are industrial companies in some form or another, if you include sensors and batteries and so forth as in the industrial kind of definition. But if you look at what's happening there, you know, I'm working on a concept piece with some of our PR folks around the rise in blue collar tech. You know, we've met in the last 8 weeks. I've met the CEOs of Stanley Black & Decker, Halliburton, Baker Hughes, Johnson Controls. Everybody's moving to digital and virtual at the same time, and COVID only accelerated that.
That's true. Yeah, and these Rust Belt companies or industrial heartland companies really do need the transition. They've been left behind by the tech boom in Silicon Valley and the offshoring to China and Asia. So they're just hurting.
But part of, Rebecca, what's different now is that it's kind of time to shine for these industrial companies, because one of the greatest trends in the human race right now is the move to electrification, right? Moving from hydrocarbons to an electric economy. And the people actually best positioned to be able to do that are actually these industrial companies. And if you look at Stanley Black & Decker, the fastest growing division is the group that's actually selling electronic car components into the automotive industry. If you look at some of the investments that Nicolas and team have made at TDK, they're around this transition in the economy. And the industrial companies that are really switched on and that are going to be aggressive, they're going to reap unfairly good rewards as a result of being aggression during this transition. And they know it. The CEOs of this company are very smart. They're very well aware. Ishiguro-san and others, they know that this is their time to act. And that's one of the reasons that Nicolas is here and he's so empowered to be this successful.
I think it's all about...
go ahead, Nicolas.
I think it's all about, there are so many disruptions that can come towards these companies, these big companies. And these threats, how do you turn them into opportunities? And I think if you were to find one good reason, if you were really the most important reason to do corporate venturing, is to understand these disruptions early enough so that you can not ignore them, not know about them, but actually know about them and adapt your business. And so part of the storytelling is when I showed the slide to Ishiguro-san and the top management about why corporate VCs should be in market we're not in and technology we don't have, I was showing this major wave that was going to slam into a surfer. And the surfer, I called him the business group. And the business group, they have to look at 1 or 2 years from now. They don't have the luxury to look at 5 years down the line what disruptions come. That's why you need corporate venturing, is to be able to see so far in advance, make bets into the future, what kind of future you think will happen, and adapt early enough. If I think about TDK, most of our product takes at least 3 years to develop, from fundamental material science breakthrough to a final product. Probably 5 years for some, if not more. If you don't have this 5-year view about what the future will look like, you're never going to be first to market. If anything, you might actually be disrupted way too much.
Yeah, that's a really tough balancing act. You're managing the day-to-day products, but you're also thinking ahead. So I can certainly understand why you need this extra layer here. But there was a question also about how much you actually invest in Europe, in Belgium. I don't know. Somebody on the chat here is very interested in Belgium and the Netherlands.
So what's interesting is the investment we made on Monday. One of our co-investors is IMEC, based in the Netherlands.
Oh, okay.
And I'm hoping, I mean, Paul mentioned I come from Lille, and Belgium is just next door, and part of my family is from Belgium. I'm really hoping at some point we find a really good startup. One of the TDK companies called IC Sense based in Belgium, and they are one of these top startups that we were lucky to acquire. So there is definitively very high quality technology companies
Right.
in Europe and in Belgium and Netherlands. I used to work for NXP, which was headquartered in Netherlands, so I definitively know about the science parks there, and
Sure.
I believe there is a lot of things happening in Eindhoven and the rest of Europe.
Sure. So your network is good there then. Your network is very good there. What about Hong Kong? Are you doing anything in Hong Kong?
Greater China, I think there is so much happening. So absolutely. We've made one investment in China, but I'm actually looking at next year to start recruiting a team in China.
In where?
So it's likely between Shanghai and Shenzhen. It's really going to depend on which topics we really want to double click on. For example, if it's more on the IoT or industrial IoT, it's most likely in Shenzhen. But there are other topics like energy transformation where it may be Shanghai. So it's one way we need to make our priority depending on where we want to learn most. And this is back to the strategic learnings.
Okay, and so where's your one China deal so far? You've done one China deal. Where is that one?
We are so excited by this one. It's Autoflight, which is an eVTOL company, so vertical takeoff and landing company. And here that came from looking at more than 200 eVTOL companies. And we came to an insight, which was most of the eVTOL company are in two camps. The ones that are based in Europe or US, and they have this Boeing or Airbus skill set of doing planes and aerodynamism. And then you have all the ones coming from China, which are very good for drones. And you think about DJI teams and so on. And here we found a team that was actually based in Shanghai, but with a really good R&D team in Germany. And they were combining both how to do a plane well and how to do a drone well. And that meant that the unit economics of this company is just so much better than anything we've seen ever from the other eVTOL company. And we believe unit economics will matter a lot as it starts to mature and go into mass production. So that's why we invested in Autoflight.
Okay, very good. What about Taiwan? So we have Michael Jelliman here on the Q&A. He wants to know about your experience in Taiwan and investment opportunities and why you're a fan of Taiwan.
Well, first I lived 6 years in Taipei and 6 years in Kaohsiung, and I still have my home in Kaohsiung. So clearly there is a love to the place and the people and the food and the technology. I mean, I went to work in Taipei and Hsinchu, so clearly there's a lot of things to love about Taiwan. But I spent 12 years being in charge of the Asia region. And I spent a lot of time in China as well. And there are many places that are amazing in China. So I definitively think I'm really looking forward to making more investments in Greater China, no doubt.
Okay, well, there's some people on the line here who could probably help you out with that. I know Michael Jelliman has spent quite a bit of time in Taiwan. So, okay, look, we have to do our poll before it time's up. So let me just launch the poll. The poll is only a few questions this week, and it's anonymous. And Nicolas and Paul, you can just chime in verbally, because I don't think you can see the poll. There's 4 questions, all very easy.
I can see the poll, but I can't click on it. I will answer the first one, maybe, which is, do I use Bitcoin? And here, actually, for sustainability reasons, I never wanted to use Bitcoin because the amount of energy needed today for work of proof is a problem. So I think as Bitcoin would evolve into a stake of proof, that would really be better because the energy required would be much lower. But today I would feel wrong about having anything to do with Bitcoin, even though I love the technology and I love the fact that it's solving the digital scarcity problem. Okay,
good. Paul, do you use Bitcoin?
So I don't personally use Bitcoin, but Foundation's had a very successful run of investments in the crypto space. And I was on the board of a company that transitioned to a crypto community. And as Nicola and I almost never disagree on anything, but I will take issue with the concept of the energy intensity of Bitcoin, because if you measure that against the energy intensity of the Bank of America or Wells Fargo or any of these other places, I'm pretty sure Bitcoin's going to come out on top. So the movement toward electronic currency and a cryptocurrency to me is inexorable, and ultimately over time can be very positive for society, and just makes a lot more sense. I think we're going to look back in the not too distant future in the same way that now, there's no longer the Dutch guilder, there's no longer the French franc, there's none of these things. And over time, I think you're going to see more and more centralization around currencies, and they're going to move to an electronic blockchain-based thing.
Right.
It'll just be the modern way it gets done.
I think
Okay.
we will be in agreement is when it moves from proof of work to proof of stake. Then
Right.
I think we will be
Yeah.
fine.
Staking, yep.
Okay. Well, yeah, I'm all in favor of some standardization here. I tried to get rid of some Indian rupees, but no bank will take them. The currency is too unstable. So, okay. Do you want to work from office? Okay. Do you want to work from office? Just say yes or no, Paul and Nicola. Or are you already working from the office?
I just set up the policy for TDK Ventures for when we go back to the office. And I think it's going to be work from the office by default. But most of the time, I'm okay that people work anywhere they want as long as they are as productive. So the only thing I'm setting up is 2 times a week on the Monday afternoon and Thursday afternoon, where everyone can be together to work as a team, to brainstorm, to feel some camaraderie. But the rest, they can do whatever they want.
Okay.
Yeah, I have a not different, but just a maybe more nuanced answer in terms of my situation with Mach 49. So I don't really have to go into the office at Foundation much at all anymore. I go in kind of occasionally, but the opportunity cost for me to go into offices right now, since we've switched to virtual, it would be enormous. I'm doing anywhere from 40 to 45 meetings a week virtually. And adding the friction that used to exist around transportation and all these other things is actually would quite literally cost millions of dollars. So it's a conundrum that I haven't thought through all the way yet. But it's I think others are going to get to this place too. We are wildly more efficient online than we have been in person. So
Yeah. Okay. Should tech titans be more regulated?
that's a no for me, but
Okay. 89% of those on the Zoom say yes.
Yeah.
Okay. The last question was a throwaway, so we'll get rid of that one. Okay. So I'm going to end the polling and share the results. And thank you everyone for participating. And our thanks to Paul and Nicola for joining us today. Let me just say a few concluding remarks, and we'll let them get back to work. I love this photo of the two of you here. This inspired me to come up with that, 2 Silicon boys are dealing outside. So I guess nobody gets my joke. Nobody's laughing. Okay. Okay, I'll amuse myself. Okay. We did the poll, we did the Q&A, we said thank you, Paul, Nicola. Okay, join us for our next one. David Yuan, Tidemark. It's gonna be really interesting. He's done a lot of Silicon Valley deals, some China deals. July 15th, our usual time, 4 p.m. So, okay, how did we do? Did we have an NPS on this, folks? So please, I'd love to get your feedback. And so just write to me at news@Silicon Dragon Ventures, or write to me at Rebecca@Silicon Dragon Ventures. I'd love to have your feedback on the show and what we can do to improve it. And yeah, so anyhow, and thanks to our series supporter, Invest Hong Kong. We got in a question about Hong Kong. We got in a question about mainland China and Taiwan. We even talked about Ohio here. So I think we covered our bases. And we had 2 great communicators on. So again, our thanks. Thank you so much.
thank you.
Thank you, Rebecca. Thank you.
Right.
Good night, everyone.
This, everyone, so it'll be online pretty soon. But you
Thanks
have to
so
do it in
much.
a few days. Thank
We
you again.
appreciate it.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Okay, bye-bye.